Whether you're laying out a website, an app, or a poster, any kind of visual material, you need to develop a grid, a mechanism for holding your content and then creating hierarchy with that content so it's easier to use. So in this lesson, we're going to jump into grid, hierarchy, and practice some of that in design skills. So I'm using Miro here. First, I want to recommend this book, Introduction to Graphic Design by Era Sharon. Got a copy right here. It's a fantastic design book, and it'll walk you through many of these steps. If you check out the typography chapter, you'll see there are a range of exercises as well as examples that look a whole lot like what I'm covering in this video. So let's dig in, and I'll walk you through some of the examples on the video, and then I'll talk about the assignment. So here in Miro, first off, a few examples of grid. Notice in these examples that the grid is invisible but holds everything together. Our title here aligns all the way down with this column all the way to the left. Then we have flow lines that run across, as well as a baseline grid that holds the content in a very clear, orderly fashion. When your design is organized with a grid, and when you align everything in that design, viewers will not really know why the design looks so cohesive, but the reason why is because it's set with a grid and because everything holds together with clear alignment. So as you're designing, if you ever have text or an image or something like that that's floating off and not aligned with something else, fix that. Look for an alignment. Everything should lock up in some way, and this grid is a good example of that. So I've got a few examples also on this Miro board. For example, a very simple 3-column layout, actually probably a 4-column layout. This one does not have text in it. But notice how everything is aligned, even on that baseline grid, which is where the text aligns all the way across beautifully. The subheads are set in another color. You can simply use color, but no type size. You don't have to make the type bigger. Just changing the color will differentiate that text and make it stand apart. This layout is subtle, clear, and gets the job done in a very elegant way with a lot of negative space here. Other examples, for example, a website design, you can see those columns that extend down and all the little flow lines, content changes as far as size with subheads, hold the design together in a very cohesive way. Unigrid and Massimo Vanelli and partners developed this grid back in the 1970s, and it is a uniform grid that has tons of columns. I mean, check it out. Lots of columns, lots of modules that are created, all these boxes. But this grid holds together any kind of flyer or brochure you get from the national parks. This grid system is still in use today, and a testament to this grid system is it works on every brochure in the entire park system. It's got so many modules, so many of these little squares that you can put content, you can put images, you can put text, you can put images, you can put illustrations all throughout, and it holds together beautifully. So whenever you develop a grid, you are developing rules for how your design will be held together. Developing a grid is that first step, and it actually makes your job easier as a designer because then the content can flow in. And if you ever have a question of like, ooh, where should I put this text? Just follow the grid, follow the rules, and your design will look better and your content will be more usable. So let's talk about the exercise that we've got coming up for this assignment. Grid labeled in this section, I label some of those parts of the grid like margin, your columns right here, one of those modules, which is this area, as well as gutter and flow lines. So for assignment 1, I've got an example of some unstyled text. All of this text is set in the same typeface for this dictionary.com definition. And then beneath it, you'll see how a designer has taken this content and laid it out using a grid, and they used uppercase letters to set the set these subheads. Very simple and elegant solution where they were using their grid here. So for this first step in the assignment, I am supplying text, and you have to take the text and put it into your own grid. An 8x8 grid, 8-inch by 8-inch grid I've already provided for you. I'll show you that in a moment. For this first round, you are not allowed to make anything bold, to put anything in italics, or to change the type size. I want you to stick with only one type size. The only thing you're allowed to change is uppercase text. Uppercase text will allow a headline to come forward or subheads to come forward, but if you can design only with text and only uppercase, then you can do just about anything once you get to color, bold, and other kinds of styling. So take a look at our assignment here. I've got a grid for you, as well as pods of text taken from Craigslist Best Of. This assignment, round 1, is our first step. We will work on round 2 later. Well, you'll get to use uppercase and bold and italic and the full bore, but let's keep it simple over here. So your first step for this assignment, go ahead and grab a grid, and I want you to copy it. I did Command C on the Mac, and then paste that grid out for yourself, and then also grab some text. You can choose any of these pods of text. Copy that one, and I'm going to find my spot and paste it. So your next step will be copy each line of this text. Some are paragraphs, some are single lines, and paste them and drag them on top of your grid, and align and arrange this text in a way that you can create a clear hierarchy. Your job, you must use all the text in your text pod that's unstyled. You can only use uppercase or upper and lowercase, so only all caps or upper and lowercase. And you cannot make the type size any larger. So no type styling, no making anything larger. You can take this text and in Miro, use the text tool. See, like this, I've taken one example here, one line, and I can take it and I can drag it over here. So lay this out on your grid. Don't worry about filling every portion of the grid, but get all of those parts into the grid in a cohesive way. Look at our examples here. Again, you do not have to fill every corner. Use negative space, align things to the left, and use those columns to your advantage to create a very clear, cohesive layout. There are examples here on the board. So for our next critique, take all this text, put it onto that grid as an alignment. If you have questions, of course, let me know. Follow the grid. Align everything in an elegant way and consider hierarchy. What is your title? What is your secondary information? And use negative space between those to group text and also to set text apart. Rule of thumb here, if you put some text on the page and then have a lot of empty space around it, a lot of negative space, that item of text will really stand out, because when you have nothing around it, it comes forward. It presents itself. So space is your friend. If you add space around something, that item's going to come forward. If you jam a lot of text all together, that will all group. That's a good thing, but there's sometimes when you want items to be a little bit separated. So check out the examples here in this critique in the Miro board, and let's start using the grid.